After performing the Johansson co-integration test, and in case if you find some co-integrating vector in that, that is some linear integration of all these series, which is co-integrating equation as well, then you will proceed further for vector error correction model. Else you will go for unrestricted var. So in the last session, we reached up to this point and still performance of appropriate diagnostic tests is still left. So I'll show you both the tests where diagnostics are matching and diagnostics are not matching, both ways. Why? This I intentionally chose just to tell you. And if you remember, in the morning itself, one question was asked that was regarding, and we had a discussion regarding multivariate normality, if you remember. So, making more clarity for that, this was my data set. And in this data set, what we have done so far is we took up this US dollar, then INDR, and after this INDR, we took Japanese yen, then euro. And we have also seen that leg, after leg selection, the VAR leg order decision criteria suggested one leg. And based on that, we performed this. After performing Johansson co-integration, we concluded that there is one co-integrating equation exists in the Johansson system, which is indicating that there is long-run relationship among these participating time series. Afterwards, we move to VECM, and as per the rule, if you are performing Johansson co-integration with 3 legs, then estimation of VECM will lose 1 leg. So this is 1, 1. Afterwards, we reach to this, and we have also seen the breakdown of this ECT term in the long run, and formation of variety of equation. This is ECT, we have seen, and at the same time, we have seen the short run coefficient of error correction, speed of adjustment, I mean, this one, and interpretations accordingly. Now, this is a genuine data, and there could be a possibility that after this VECM, after performing this VECM, we may or may not have the affirmative diagnostic tests. So let me perform the autocorrelation using the Lagrange multiplier test. What is the hypothesis? Hypothesis is no serial correlation at leg H. And we are accepting this. We are failing to reject this null hypothesis, and therefore there is no problem of autocorrelation. We move further, the normality, say orthogonalization method, where Cholesky covariance is taken into account. And just see here, the first part is talking about skewness, second part is talking about kurtosis, third part is, which is Zarkabera test, taking these two into these two in consolidation. So looking here, these are nothing but these are the participating variables, time series variables. So it suggests that jointly multivariate normality is missing. Residuals are not normally distributed because residuals are multivariate normal, and we are rejecting this. So if we are rejecting this, it means residuals are not multivariate normal. So given these circumstances, we can improvise upon our sample. We could adapt various methods which are available in the literature as well as in terms of techniques, which can correct all these diagnostics. Whether it is concerning with heteroscedasticity, see here, data is heteroscedastic. So the problem of standard error is there. Okay, the chi-square test statistics suggest that residuals are heteroscedastic. This is a problem. So we can correct all these things with the application of various methods. Literature is vast, availability is there, so you can surf it out. This is one thing. If one more data set, I'll show you in the fast run. Same data set which we have utilized. So let us have a different data set. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay. So let us have a different data set. And in this previously taken data set, what we have done is we selected these variables as LRM. And we have checked the normality of, we have checked the stationarity of all these variables already. And we found that this particular IPV showing the level stationarity, right, at 5%. So just for the sake of consideration, let me say that this is not stationary at 1% level. At 5%, it is stationary, but at 1%, it is not stationary because the rest of my variables I have considered with a significance level of say 1%, and all of them have shown the stationarity at 1% or so. Therefore, let me have this variable, and this variable. That is LRM I'm taking, and let me first click on LRM because this is my target variable. Next is LRY, log of this, and real income. Next is price, and let's take ID, or we can even stick to these three only, and we can proceed. So let us first of all have var specification. And based on var, what I will do is I will churn out the leg structure optimality, and it shows that as per SC, leg 1 is appropriate, leg 3 is appropriate as per HQ, and 4 legs as per AIC. And usually, you will find that HQ is falling between AIC and SC. It's a likelihood, but not as a rule. Okay. Therefore, we would be using either of this. We can go for 4, 3, or 1. Okay. Now, what I will do is as a group, let me take 1, 1. And it suggests that there is co-integrating vector as per MEX eigenvalue and as per stress test. There is affirmation from these two. We'll go for VECM. In VECM, we are left with 1 only. We cannot do this as 1, 0. But as per rule, we are required to lose 1 leg. So in case if we are taking 1, 4, while performing VECM, we will write 1, 3. If optimal leg length is 3, then while performing VECM, we will put 1 to 2. Let's click OK. These are the results. This is negative, and E statistics is significant. So this is breakdown of error correction term in the long run. This is ECT coefficient in short run, along with lagged values of other exogenous variables. Okay. After this, after performing this, we need to perform the appropriate diagnostics. So here you will find the difference. First of all, we can even check the stability of this modeling. That could be checked with the help of this graph. You can see here all dots. These are inverse root of autoregression. So all these dots are inside the circle, and it depicts that there is a stability. You can go with this also, but here if the value is coming down as 1, so it shows the imposition for 2 unit root testing. The value should not come 1. It should have a proximity with 0.9 values, but it should not be 1. So this we should take as a caution. Performing the arch, performing the Lagrange multiplier test or serial correlation residuals, it shows that there is a problem. Look at here. Earlier one, problem was not there for autocorrelation, problem was there for heteroskedasticity. So no serial correlation at leg H. At second leg, you could say that we have certain relief. Considering the first leg, there is a problem. Moving further, taking into account the normality. So you could see here, if we consider skewness, if we consider kurtosis or the Zarkabira test statistics significance, it all indicates that we are having no problem of multivariate normality. It means residuals are multivariate normal. There is no problem. I hope I could able to resolve your query which you have asked in the morning session. regarding the multivariate normality and all. By taking these two examples, one where we couldn't able to deal with the multivariate normality of residuals, and here is visible. And the last test is regarding heteroscedasticity, and it is also in favor to us because null hypothesis is saying the residuals are heteroscedastic, and which can create problem for standard error and coefficient estimation as well as t statistics, but no problem is there because residuals are homoscedastic. There is no problem of heteroscedasticity here. This was all about ECM. Now we move further into VAR. So what is VAR? VAR is basically a model which generalizes the univariate autoregressive modeling by allowing the multivariate time series. So you might have observed that in case of a univariate regression, there is single equation model, and where the current values are explained by its lagged values. That is univariate. But whenever we are including n number of variables with n equations in a model, that is VAR. That is vector autoregression. So I believe you are already through of autoregression. What exactly is autoregression? May I raise the first question I am raising to the participants? Do you know about what is autoregression? What exactly it is? Okay. Autoregression is supposing that let me write. Say this is 12, 55, 78, 8, 75, 79. Okay, this is my series. Now, what I will do is I'll copy this and put it here. Let us remove this and let us remove this. What exactly I have done is, you could see, this is my series and this is my lagged series. So if I need to perform, or if I need to take into AR1 process, this is what? This is AR1 process. This is known as AR1 process. Similarly, AR2 process is there when we are using two legs. And now I will call this as A, I call this as P, and I will perform the regression for the same. Right? Can perform a regression for the same. Let's take the data analysis. I'll go choose regression. The dependent variable is, say, this one. The independent variable is this one, and confidence is 95%. We need itself below this. This is AR1 process where the lagged value of series trying to explain the variability existing in the series itself. this would take us to other univariate, further into other univariate series analysis like moving average, where we are using the error terms. Then it would lead to ARMA, autoregressive and moving average method for forecasting some series, and its furtherance into its decomposition, integration. Then we will go to ARIMA, and a lot is there. There's a lot. Box-Jensen techniques and others. So let me coming back to my VAR model. So VAR is basically using these legged version of variables and trying to forecast the same. What it uses, it is trying to forecast the same by using the legged version and then trying to identify the significance of the same. For this, let us have some 3 variables from this data set only, because we have seen that the data set has already shown the VAR significance earlier. So I would be using this. Let me take this IBO. Next is IDE. And let us take this LRM. First of all, we are required to check the unit root, which I have already checked for it. And we have reached to a consensus that at 1% level of significance, they are at a level data, they are non-stationary, and they are stationary. The first difference. Now, after performing this unit root test, what we will do is we will make the standard VAR. We will go to standard VAR specification and try to check what is the leg structure. It suggests for 1 as per SC and HQ. Okay. So now I will go to co-integration test, and the co-integration test, what I will do is perform this. After performing this is very much visible, very clear to us. There is no co-integrating vector in the system. So we cannot perform vector error correction model. Rather, we should proceed further for unrestricted VAR. So here again, I'll go to VAR specification, and in the standard VAR, here we are not losing any leg. Therefore, whatever we took up in the Johansson co-integration, just for looking forward to co-integrating error, co-integrating vector or equation, the same we will do here. So this is your VAR. I'll take one by one what exactly it indicates and what are the implications for the same. But prior to this, let us have a little bit of a theory so that our understanding would be very clear. VAR is a n variable, n equation model, and which express here, and which express each variable as a linear function of its past values. What does it mean? It means AR process. It means AR process. AR process is one where its own legged past values are being utilized as a regressor, and they would be helpful in causing for the furtherance to forecasting. The past value of all other variables are also utilized in case of a multivariate. It means if you have more than 2 or even 2 variables in the system, then they would be utilized for the same. And their past values, their lag values are also being utilized for estimating the model as well as for the forecasting. And a serially uncorrelated error term means the error term which is coming out from OLS parameters itself should not be serially correlated with the time series. So in case of a VAR, Christopher Sims, in his paper Macroeconomic and Reality in 1980, he has worked a lot for the same, and he has given the premise for the autoregressive models. Matlab means what? Vector autoregressive models. Next to it is, let us have the premise. VAR models provide coherent and credible approach for data description, more importantly, the forecasting and structural inference for policy decisions. Let me have an example of bivariate VAR. We are calling that, usually you will find VAR is written as VAR P. It indicates, P indicates the number of legs. So VAR 1 here, YT and XT are two time series and for one leg. So what exactly is the equation? Equation is YT is equal to A1 B11 YT1 T minus 1 plus B12 XT plus UT. What we can extract out of it? If we know vector algebra, or if we could know the multiplication, such type of a structure is helpful, but no issues. Even if you don't know, there is no problem. Let me make it understandable to you. This A1 and this A2. Interestingly, in case of VAR, all time series participants are dependent variables. They are, or more specifically, you can say that those are endogenous variable, right? So the moment we are saying all are endogenous variable, it means if I'll take the first equation says that the dependence of y at time t, means now, is equal to A1 as intercept, B11 as regression coefficient for lagged values of yt. It means one lag prior, whatever is the value of y, it would act as a regressor. And later on, it would be acting as a, it would be acting with certain, by generating the coefficient B11 and act for the forecasting purposes. Next is, as I wrote earlier, this is the second coefficient, beta coefficient, and here this xt, this variable, the lagged value of this variable will be utilized for establishing the dependence relationship for yt. And these are error terms. This is equation 1. Let us take this next one. Here xt is dependent, A2 is the intercept, and this yt minus 1, this other variable, just like we have utilized here xt minus 1, here yt minus 1 is a other variable which whose past values are trying to explain the variable xt, and here x itself, the past values of x itself would be utilizing for dependence relationship of x, and this is the error term. Okay. So in this way, if three variables are there, we can go for 3. If number of legs are increasing, then supposing that there are 2 legs. Okay. So in case of a 2 leg, what we will write? Yt is equal to A1 plus B11 YT minus 1 plus, again I will write B12 as YT minus 2, and similarly B13 as XT minus 1 itself, and B14 as XT minus 2. So legged value of both X as well as Y will feature into this equation. Same is the case with next equation. Variable YT and XT are stationary. It means they are required to have stationarity. They should not possess unit root. We have already checked for it. We have reached to this. Next is the coefficients are estimated with OLS. So it is using the estimation of coefficient is done through ordinary least square. And we are required to look into signs of coefficients for deciding the direction. Like here, if it is negative, it indicates that if I need to look into change in IBO. So IDE is having not negative relationship clearly, but I must say that it will, if ID, we can say that it will decrease. IBO will decrease because of legged value of IDE. Just like OLS. Here you can see LRM is the reason for increase in IBO. IBO is dependent. Here IDE is dependent. Here LRM is dependent. And these are legged values of IBO itself, means how the legged value of IBO itself is trying to explain IBO. Here the legged value of IDE, how they are trying to explain IBO in the next one, and this is your intercept. So it possesses negative relationship, and accordingly, if it increases, it decreases, or if it increases, it decreases. That kind of a thing. Positive sign shows the increase. It means if it increases, it entirely depends upon the increase of this. So if it increases, it increases. Next is, after deciding based on sign, we can also look forward for the R squared value, Durbin-Watson value, joint significance value, etc. So let me first look into R square value. Let's look at this 90% explanation if endogenous variable is IBO, means if IBO is endogenous or dependent, and it is being explained by its own one-legged values and other values which are participating, the legged values of others as well. So 90% explanation is there. Here 84.2% explanation is there. Here 96.4% of explanation is there. If we look at the standard errors, these are reasonably good. If you look at Akaike information criteria, which is highest. If you look at SC and IC, the value of SC is higher in all these three cases. Means we are free to use SC because difference is not that much, but need be arises, and if the difference is huge, then we are required to go with the higher one. We should use the information criteria, the higher values. It means I should use AIC for my leg selection or other criteria, for penalizing the model or reparameterization. Various things are there. As because the difference is not too much, I'm free to have SC as well. Okay, next is, you could see here the number of coefficients are 12. How come 12? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you exclude these three, then 9. These three are intercept terms, coefficients, intercept coefficients, beta 0. Rest 9 are belonging to past values of endogenous variables itself and the other ones. Okay. Now, if I look at I've already talked about the Durbin-Watson statistics and all, and it's not required. Joint significance using Wald coefficient. So for this, we need to go for PROC, although this is your regression coefficient. Take this to Excel to show you. So this is your regression coefficient. This is your standard error. So coefficient divided by standard error would yield the same result. These are your T statistics. These are what? These are your T statistics. We can infer out based on these T statistics itself, but we need to show it with some significance. That would give us a little ease. So how can we have significance for these? For that, we will go to make system, the PROC, and order by variable. Would receive this, go for estimate. These are ordinary least square based estimates, and these are significance. So you can compare, as I have told you the earlier session itself. You can check. These are the values. This is 1.105182. The standard error is 0.09512. This is 11.619. Now we have a significance. So this is significant. So its past values are significant enough in explaining this endogenous variable IBO. We can conclude out of it. Let us take the next one, and you can adjudge this C1 belongs to what? C2, you can see C2 IDE minus 1. This IDE minus 1, and this coefficient is C2. Let us check this. C2 is not significant. Means IDE is not capable of explaining IPO in the short run. This VAR is for a short run modality. C3, not significant. This is not significant. C5. So C5 is in the equation IDE and IBO minus 1. This is IDE and this one. So this is the C5. The C5 clearly shows 4.3 is the T value, and it is significant. The next one is also significant. So IDE past values and IBO's legged values are explaining IDE very clearly. And this seventh one, this is also significant. So you could say that this endogenous variable IDE is being explained by its legged value as well as legged value of IDE and legged value of LRM. Whereas in case of IBO, we have seen the non-significance of rest of the two. Even this intercept coefficient. So we could see all these things accordingly, and we can reach to certain interpretation of the same, right? And afterwards, what we can do is we can establish the joint interpretation if we wish to. For example, there you could see, if I wish to see this C2, which belongs to IDE, and C3, which belongs to LRM, these 2 and 3, are they jointly significant, showing some significance? For this, what we can do is we can go into coefficient diagnostics. We'll go into Wald coefficient test, and here I will write this C2 is equal to C2 is equal to C3. C2 is equal to C3, and this is equal to 0. It means trying to test C2 and C3, these 0 together. That is what I'm trying to see the joint significance using Wald coefficient. Let us click OK. My null hypothesis is this is 0, and here I'm failing to reject my null. It means actually they are 0. So jointly, even jointly, they cannot able to perform any significance. Now, even for this var, supposing that, although it is not allowing me to go for more legs, but supposing that I'm using 3 legs, then I find 3 legs here, right? And for these 3 legs, if I wish to see make the system first and then estimate. You can see here, now this is first one significant. This is IBO 2-legged variable, which is trying to explain this endogenous variable IBO. This is not significant, and likewise. So in the joint testing, what could I do is I'll go to Wald coefficient. I'll pick, say, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. 1 is already significant, but let us take 2 and 3. So for this 2 is equal to 3 is equal to 0. Let me see. Is significant. So here I'm again failing to reject the null hypothesis that C2, C3 is equal to 0. Had it been rejected, then despite having non-significance or insignificance at an individual level, jointly they are significant. So we can continue with these two legs together for further analysis. So in this way, this is useful and we can proceed further for the same. Going to next. I have already told you that decision for optimal leg length is playing a very important role for VAR specification, and this VAR specification is very much useful for short run period, and more stable a VAR is, we could able to churn out greater details for the short run, even the causality as well as the inferential role of these legged values. If we wish to check the stability of VAR, in the same fashion, what we will do is we'll go to view, and the leg structure, we'll see this graph. So all inverse roots autoregression inside the circle. It's a great sign. It's a good sign for the same. If I'll refer to table C here, no unit root. The earlier case we have seen two values were 1, 1. Now no value is approaching towards exact 1. So this is a good sign, and this shows that VAR is satisfying the stability condition. No root is lying, or you could say that no roots are lying outside the unit circle. Means no unit root presence is there. Afterwards, we can check the, first of all, we can check the residual testing. Check the autocorrelation first. Autocorrelation satisfies the condition. Null hypothesis is no serial correlation, and we are failing to reject. Therefore, no problem of autocorrelation or serial correlation exists in our VAR model. We move further. Let us see the normality. It also satisfies the normality condition here. All the three variables at individual level shows that residuals are multivariate normal, considering skewness individually as well as jointly, kurtosis individually as well as jointly, and the composite effect of this skewness and kurtosis in Zerka-Vera. It clearly shows the model is free from such errors. It means the residuals are multivariate normal. Next is the last one, and this is heteroscedasticity. And here you could see here that the problem of heteroscedasticity is not there. What is null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is same. Residuals have no heteroscedasticity. It means residuals are homoscedastic. We obtain the same result here. We have obtained the same result here. This is diagnostic we have performed. Now, an important thing is left here. Let me take that in detail. If good number of coefficients are not significant, what you will do? That condition, what should we do? Just for the sake of understanding, I have changed the leg condition, although as per var leg length, I need to have one leg only, but just to make you understand, I consider here 3 legs, show you a different thing. Supposing that it allows us for 3 legs, and after this, I'll go into proc and make a system. These are by variable. Just estimate. Okay. After inspecting into one-to-one with their these statistics and all, we can infer out based on their probability as well. But supposing that if good number of legs found to be just like this, found to be insignificant, then what we are required to go for? What should we do? Let's see here. This is significant, this is not significant, this is not significant, this is not significant. So we can count how many are significant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 8 values are significant out of 30. And 3 we can take off. Right? And these values are tenth, 20th, and 30th. I'll take out 10th, 20th, and 30th. It means out of 30, how many I said? Hardly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 values. Then 8 out of 30. So 26% values are significant and rest of the values are insignificant. So if rest of the values are insignificant, what should I do? The first option is I should see if LRM1, LRM2, and LRM3, just note down their coefficient. This is 10th, so 9, 8, and 7. So I'll check out these 3 together and a joint. Take C7, C8, say C9 is equal to 0. We are failing to reject the null hypothesis. It means LRM 1, 2, and 3 were not able to jointly show some significance. So such type of redundant variables should be removed. We can remove them. This is what the point is. Consideration for optimal legs vis-a-vis total number of significant coefficient in percentage. I have only 26%, 26.66% of my variables as significant, and rest 1 minus this is insignificant variable. So one remedy is what? One remedy I have tried for the joint significance of these variables. This is one. If at all it works, let the variables remain in the system. We should move further. Otherwise, we can revisit the over-parameterized model and we should try to reach the parsimonious model. And that could be done by a removal of these variables. Removal of these insignificant or redundant variable. How can we do that? I could do that by looking here. Example, we copy this. Let me paste it. Now, the estimation, if 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. From C2 to C10 should remove. So what I have done is C10 is the coefficient. C2 to C9 I have removed. Next is accordingly 12, 13 and so on. Okay. Just to show you, it's 12, 13, remove. Supposing that this is the case, go to spec, Control A, B, and I can re-estimate this. So you will find that redundant variables will be removed. What it will do is, it will improvise your model. How it will improvise? In terms of R square, and if at all, for example, model is having a severe problem concerning autocorrelation, that would keep on revising. That could be corrected accordingly. In this way, we can reparameterize our model. We can improvise this model accordingly. This is an important thing. If at all you find that the legged value of that concerned endogenous variable is important, let's not remove it. Let it remain in the system with its inherent insignificance. That is completely your discretion. You are free to do that. And you should do that by taking prior support from earlier researchers. Okay. Now let me move forward to impulse response function and variance decomposition. What exactly these are? We have already seen the residual diagnostics for the same. What cases we have analyzed. this point, if you have any doubts, kindly raise the questions. And then we will move further for impulse response function and variance decomposition alongside the causality. If you have any questions, kindly ask.
Sir,
Yes, please.
if two coefficients are jointly significant, C2, C3, then how we will put it in the equation? Like to remove a redundant variable, we delete it. But if they are jointly significant, then how
Then
we will put it?
let those two variables remain in the system and in the equation. While giving the interpretation for those two variables, we will write that we kept it intentionally because jointly they are showing the significance. It means they have importance.
Okay, sir.
You got my
Thank you,
point?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
And even if some variable which you find, for example, this C10, if you or say this C15, if you think there is a relevance of this particular variable, this lagged variable in the system, there is a relevance. So despite being insignificant, you should keep this in your system. But you need to mention it. You need to give justifications for it, why you are keeping this. Got my point? Okay.
Yes,
Some
sir.
other
But
questions.
if it is not significant, then why should we keep it, sir? Like the justification, how do we give?
No. At times, when you are required to match up with your unbiased or balanced observation panel of considered variables, then this is at an advanced stage when you are dealing with ARDL or NARDL. Sometimes you are required to keep in system your insignificant variables as well. A generalized var version, which is unrestricted one, you can remove these redundancies, which shows the efficiency or insignificance. But the advanced level, sometimes it may be required. And not opening that Pandora's box, otherwise we will drag into that only.
Yes, sir.
While dealing non-linearity and other issues, we need to keep that. Some more questions, please. Okay. So now I am moving towards impulse response function. What is this impulse response function is? I have written these things in detail. Impulse response function traces the effect of one-time shock to one of the innovations on current and future values of endogenous variable. These are endogenous variables. All these is in the VAR system. We are using endogenous variables only. You could confirm this. If I go for estimate, in the endogenous variable, you will find all the variables. In the exogenous, nothing is there except this C. Okay. Cholsky uses the inverse of Cholsky factor of residual covariance matrix to orthogonalize the impulses. It's a method, and from where we can get this method is if you go to view. In the view, you will find this impulse response. So in impulse response, if you wish to define this impulse, then you will find this default Cholsky's degree of freedom adjusted. This is using the Cholsky's decomposition method for impulse response. This option imposes the ordering of the variable in the var and attributes to all the effects of any common component of variable that comes first in the var system. And this is entirely depending on the economic theory, its sense, and its assumption. What does it mean?
Vishal sir, are you there? Our speaker is facing some technical issues. He will join shortly. Shant.
Hello. All the participants are requested to wait for the session. Sir will join soon. Sir is facing some network issue. So kindly be patient.
Fine, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, so I was at this, sorry for that disturbance, some internet issues are there. So what I'm doing is I'm putting this impulses for IBO, and I would be gathering the responses from IBO, IDO, IDE, and LRM. The moment I click OK, I'll get such figures. These figures are showing the response of IBO to IBO, response of IDE to IBO, and response of LRM to IBO. If you look into this, what this signifies, it signifies that the impulse response function is the indicator of transitory as well as persistent dynamic responses of a variable to one standard deviation shock. One standard deviation shock to another variable. It means plus minus one standard deviation if you take into account, and based on that, these IRF can indicate transitory or persistence. It means permanent as well as temporary dynamic response of variables to other variable. And with the existence of co-integration, if co-integration exists, then this IRF in the VAR system is becoming very important and useful, and it can give us some more insights. And as because we are dealing with unrestricted VAR, which usually, in this case, the permanent effect of a shock in one variable will generally not die down the long run event, which is visible here. So it shows what? Let me go back to this again. And the impulse response, talking about, say, 24 periods, putting none here, place of analytic, asymptotic, I would receive such type of responses. And what it shows, this is a 0-0 line, and it shows that initially this IBO to IBO, IDE to IDE, and LRM to LRM are response to itself. So let's take a different variable. So IBO to IDE, what it says, response of IBO to IDE. So how IDE is being affected by IBO? So you can see here, initially it declines, although it's negative, initially it declined, then remain a little consistent for a certain period of time, and afterwards it has started increasing and then stabilized. So here we could say that the shocks are transitory. In later stage, they remain transitory for a while and then reach to equilibrium by making its own stability for a good amount of period. If you take into account these, initially starting with 0, then rises the response of IBO to LRM. It rises, remain there for a certain period of time, then start decreasing, and afterwards stabilized. So it has shown a fluctuation from positive to negative, and then reaching to equilibrium. If you look at the response of this IDE to IBO, you can say that these are persistence with minor fluctuations. Why these are persistence? Because they are not crossing this 0, 0. Okay. So transitory and persistence means temporary and permanent. Both are being decided when the shocks are remaining on either side of this 0. So you could see here, fluctuation is there. So here you can see initially it rises, then declining, and then reaching to a stability. But it hasn't crossed the 0 line and reaching into negativity. If you look at this case, they have started declining, a permanent effect up till now, and then reach to negative values in the fourth period. You can see here, these are periods, these are values. So in the fourth period, it has fourth or fifth period, it has entering into negative, and then it remained in this negative region only. So accordingly, you can look into all these things and analyze. If in place of this, you kindly remember, let me take this case, IPO to IDE, throughout it is negative, bearing few values which are there at 0 or little of positive. IBO to IDE, kindly remember this. Here IBO to LRM, initially it rises in the positive region and then start declining and stabilize in the equilibrium. So let us have the remembrance for this IBO to IDE and IBO to LRM. Let me take you to in impulse response in tabular form. You remember IBO to IDE and IBO to LRM. Response of IBO, IDE, and LRM. Just see, throughout negative. It is throughout negative, and a certain period of time it remained positive, and thenceforward it directed towards negative. So with the table values, you could infer with the help of figures and all, you can infer. So you're free. So in this way, these impulse response functions are useful in estimating the inferences, whereby how these transitory effects are showing that whether variable will return to its previous equilibrium or not, and if it will return, can we anticipate in how many few periods or further periods. So the most important aspect is these impulse response function traces the effect of one-time shock to one of the innovation on current and future values of the endogenous variable. This is the important thing. Take home. Apart from that, if you click this analytic asymptotic, then you will find envelope around this, and this envelope is talking about the range. It will never cross this upper bound and lower bound. This upper bound and lower bound is confidence interval, and this is based on the standard error, plus minus 2 standard error. So the graph is same. Just we find here the envelope bounds. In this bound, it will further to its new journey. We can increase, we can decrease as per the requirements. A period for which the responses are looked into. Let's say I would be interested in looking to only 10 period. Accordingly, it will change, would be customized. This is all about variance decomposition. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Because we have certain internet issues, so that's why I keep on asking you with intervals. Next is, let us move to variance decomposition. What is this variance decomposition? Again, for factorization, it will use Cholsky's decomposition, and instead of graphs, I mean state graph or other graphs, it uses table. So table have more clarity and visibility. So this is variance decomposition. And variance decomposition, what it says, while this impulse response function traces the effect of shock to one endogenous variable to other variable in the var, variance decomposition separates the variation in one endogenous variable into component shocks of var. So this is a line which I have already highlighted. In simple terms, what we can say about it, it displays the percentage of error made forecasting a variable over time due to specific shocks or innovations. These shocks could be for a short period of time. Next is how much variability in dependent variable is explained by its own shock, and shocks in the other variable in the system is of utmost importance. That we can see. So we can analyze this way. Interestingly, here I would say that these are contemporaneous innovations. Okay. This is a different name for this. And one interesting thing is, if you take these three together, all together, then you will find that the total of this row for decomposition part, it is 100%. So it is 99.54, it is 0.08, it is 0.375 and so on. So if you will total, this is 100. So each row will have 100%. And these are to be looked as a percentage. So what I can infer out of this variance decomposition of IBO, I could say that here IBO is influencing itself for the next 10 periods, which is there. If, let me take variance decomposition for 4 periods, and now you could see IBO is influencing itself and explaining itself. Gradually, in the due course of time, you will find that it is gradually decreasing and others are trying to explain. These are insignificant. These are insignificant. If we go to the last, we could say that hardly 8.738% explanation, or you could say the decomposition, variance decomposition of IDE into IBO is visible. This is insignificant, 1%. So 89% of influence, rather you could say, is being explained by IBO itself. In case of IDE, it influences itself, but gradually you will find that IBO has taken a lead, and later to that, IBO has greater influence on IDE. In the later stage of this forecast. So it basically talks about forecast errors. Very clearly, I have written how much the variability in dependent variable is explained by its own shocks and shocks in the other variable of the system. So it clearly gives a signal after even a third period. Somehow IDE has started influencing, IBO has started influencing IDE. Later on, it took a lead. LRM remains stagnant and some insignificant sort of influence. Now, next to LRM is explaining itself till again till third period. It is influencing itself greaterly. Later on, IBO has taken a lead, and in the last you could see recomposition is visible to you. Here, highly significant impression of IBO is there on LM in explanation. And IDE is also not lagging behind. In the later stage, it has gradually increased to 14%. So in the last, we can say LRM is explaining itself at least, whereas IBO is the most influencer and second IDE is the second influencer in terms of explanation. This is all about variance decomposition. The important aspect of variance decomposition is it provides information about the relative importance of each random innovation in affecting the variable in VAR. So it is talking with reference to relative importance, you could say, of these participating time series variables. And variance decomposition based on this Cholsky factor can change dramatically if any alteration in ordering of the variable is there. The same thing which we have seen in the impulse response, if ordering of the variable is changed, if you put IDE as first instead of IBO, things will change. The error correction model only tells us the exogeneity of a variable and the direction of grandeur causality within the sampled period. This VDC is somehow aiding those analysis, and it is used to gauge the consistency of these causality results. And therefore, both IRF as well as variance decomposition are playing an important role, you could say, after of VAR or VECM. So next to this, I would be moving into most important aspect, that is causality. And as because we are through of VAR and VECM alongside this IRF and VDC, it would be quite comfortable for us in understanding the causality. So what is causality? So in the on and often in the normal course of time, you might have heard that X is causing Y or X causes Y. It means what? It means X is leading to Y, or X is probabilistic cause of Y. The occurrence of X is the reason for the occurrence of Y. the occurrence of X must either be before or simultaneously with Y, and so many these annotations you might have heard about causality. Regression basically deals with dependence relationship. It means independent, but not necessarily implying the causation or direction of influence. The short-run causal effects, long-run causal effects, joint causal effects, unidirectional causality, bidirectional causality, or independence. Independence means no causality. These are certain various types of causality you may encounter while you are performing your research. Short-run causal effects means which we could infer through VAR. Long-run causal effects while performing the Johansen co-integration and while the breakdown of error correction terms in long term, we can infer some long-term causal effects. Joint causal effects, which I have shown you during the short-run VAR modeling, and in the due course of time, I took the Wald testing for coefficients to see whether jointly they are putting some inference or influence on other variables, endogenous variable, that is joint. Unidirectional causality, bidirectional, I'll explain. Independence is when all the participating variables are happy with themselves, with oneself. They are not intervening or causing any kind of causality. They are not the reason of causing any kind of causality in other variable. So causality checks could be performed by means of regressors, t-statistics. This is number one. Second is Granger/Wald causality test. Here they are using the chi-square distribution, and we are using the chi-square testing, the same. Wald coefficient test. This Wald coefficient test is again using chi-square statistics and its significance for checking the causality checks. The last one is pairwise Granger causality test, and it uses F statistics for its significance. So one by one, let me take it. Let me close this. Am I audible?
Yes,
Am I
sir.
audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Clear, sir.
So,
Audio is clear.
okay. So let me go to proc form 2. This is my vector autoregressive estimates. And afterwards, what I can do is I can go to proc and make a system for the ordering of the variable. These are the estimates, OLS estimates with me. Now, if you remember, I said it that this is coefficient. These are in the parentheses, these are standard errors, and this is your t-statistic. So significance of t-statistics shows the influence. Means the length value of IBO is having influence on IBO itself. Is it significant or not? C1 clearly indicates that it is significant. It has a significant impact. T value is justifying that. So here, what I have done, these are all OLS estimates. So likewise, using these OLS estimates alongside their t-statistics and their significance, their t-statistic significance, we can develop some understanding for regressors. The impact of regressors on endogenous variable or dependent variable. This is one. Here you could see this is positive. If it is positive, this is negative, and this also is significant. So this positive and negative can talk about increase or decrease, right? This is one thing. And second is how they are influencing. Negatively, if it is influencing, then how it is influencing, and if it is positive, then how it is and up to what magnitude it is influencing. The same OLS type of things. So OLS regression aspects which we are using, that the standardized values which are there, we could infer that 1% change will bring forth 1.36% change in the dependent variable. So likewise this, which you have already seen in regression and related sessions. So this is one. Second, third and fourth, these are important, which we will take up. First one is Granger-Wald causality test. So from this VAR, what we will do is we will go to view, and the leg structure, you will find Granger causality / log exogeneity test. This is your test. And for this test, null hypothesis is legged coefficient is 0. Is it? Legged coefficient is 0. So for this IBO, dependent variable is IBO, ID is showing that the value is, it is using the chi-square statistic here. These are chi-square statistics. And now just look at this. If the p-value of chi-square statistics is less than 0.05, we can reject. We could say that legged coefficient is equal to 0 has been rejected. It means it is not 0. But here, in both the cases, legged coefficient equal to 0, we fail to reject. Therefore, there is no causality flowing from IDE to LRM. Right? Let us take the second one. IBO to LRM. IBO and LRM to IDE. In the earlier case, IDE and LRM to IBO, it was the case. So in this case, the causality is flowing from IDE LRM to IBO, and it shows that there is no causality. In case of dependent variable ID, you could see that IBO and LRM, out of these two, IBO is significant. It means causality flows from IBO to IDE, and it is significantly flowing. It is causing, IBO is causing IDE. It has an impact. Next is here, IBO again is causing LRM. It means here also LRM is being caused by IBO, and causality flows from IBO to LRM. So you could very well see IBO is the variable which cause an influence on LRM, this is one, and IDE. Whereas LRM is not having any impact on, LRM is having no impact on, if you consider IDE, there is no impact. You consider IBO, it has no impact. So here you can say, in third case, you have seen IBO is the reason of cause for LRM. The second case, IBO is the reason of cause for IDE. So these type of things we put in the unidirectional causality. Supposing that if IBO is causing IDE and if IDE is also causing IBO, then it's a bidirectional causality. Hope you are understanding. In this case, what is happening is IBO is the reason for cause of IDE and causality is flowing from IBO to IDE. So this is unidirectional. But if I consider the case of IDE and IBO, the causality is not flowing from IDE to IBO. And therefore, we will term this as unidirectional causality. Had it been the case, if this value is significant, we could say that it's a bidirectional causality. IBO is also causing IDE and IDE is also causing IBO. We can witness such type of things in the stock market, macroeconomic variables, arena, or global Q or global variable arena. We can witness these causalities. For example, if markets are integrated, US market, Indian market, European markets like DEX or CAC, all these are if somehow integrated. And if there is market fall in US, it has an impact. I'm not talking about volatility, I'm not talking about the springing of volatility from one market to other market, which you might have seen in the Arch and other models. I'm talking about the impact of causality which flows from one market to other market. I'm not putting any denial that volatility spillover is not there. Volatility spillover is there. And that's the reason if supposing that today, if US market will be down, tomorrow our markets will have an impact on an average. Because of that volatility spillover from one market to other market, and if it is taking no time in reaching to us from US to India, then the span of volatility spillover is less, but causality would be visible after that. So only volatility spillover is not the reason for causality. Causality could be because of trade, because of foreign exchange, because of parities. It could be purchase power parity, it could be interest rate parity. So many issues are there. If both are causing each other, then it's a bidirectional causality. If causality flows from one market to other market, but no responses or feedbacks are coming back, then it's a unidirectional, right? So this is our Granger-Wald causality. Third one I have already explained, and we have seen in case of a joint. So what it talks about this. If certain variables are significant, then can we perform the joint significance of these two variables or three variables together and see the impact on our short-term time series variables. Here, the null hypothesis is coefficient is equal to 0. I have already performed this. Rule is if p-value of chi-square statistics is less than 0.05, we reject. And based on that, we can club it with the regressions t statistic and infer out that causality direction is or causal effect is there, and what is the magnitude of that impact. The last one is Granger causality. So for the Granger causality, we need to do is Simply I'll open this group, go form for two legs, and this is Granger causality. So what is the hypothesis? Hypothesis is IDE doesn't Granger causes IBO. C probability is failing to reject the null. We are failing to reject null, and it means IDE is not causing IBO. LRM doesn't Granger cause IBO. This again is we are failing to reject, and therefore LRM is also not causing IBO. Next is whether IBO is causing IDE. Yes, because here the hypothesis is rejected. So if the hypothesis is rejected based on F statistics, we could say that IBO Granger causes IDE. So IBO is causing IDE. This is one. Whether IDE is causing IBO, it is not causing. So it means it is unidirectional, which we have already seen from the chi-square block exogeneity Granger-Wald test for causality in VAR. Here LRM doesn't Granger causes, and here you could see this we are failing to reject. But in case of next one, it is 0.00050 and then 6. It clearly indicates that it is significant at even 1%. So IBO is the reason of cause for LRM. IBO is reason of cause for IDE. Both are significant. Interestingly, here IDE is also causing LRM at 5% level of significance. So in all these three cases, it's a unidirectional causality. For condition to fulfill the bidirectional causality, this needs to be significant alongside this. If these two are significant together, then only we could say that it is bidirectional causality. Otherwise, it's a unidirectional causality. Okay. So this is all about causality after VAR and VECM. Now, I invite you to ask your queries. Questions, please. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you are
Okay.
audible.
So, yeah. So kindly raise the questions.
Participants, if you have any questions, kindly raise the questions. Any issues so that I can repeat whatever part you are finding it difficult to understand. So I'm ready to explain that part by repeating the process. Okay then. So I request you, I have provided a data set to you. I request all the participants that kindly do some practice, and for few of the data set which I have given you, this one, these this data set, this Gujarati data set and gold data set. So intentionally it was given where some sort of loophole is present. For example, you will find a problem, everything is going good, and all of a sudden, while checking the residual diagnostics, you will find the problem of heteroscedasticity is there, or problem of autocorrelation is there, or
residuals are multivariate, non-normal. Given such situation and conditions, I request you to struggle with that and try to find out how we can repair the data. The repair could be done with various means, or the last resort is believe in the not extrapolation, rather you could say that believe in the theory of large number or law of large number, whereby you can increase your sample size, you can match out difficulties which you are resort to. So with this note, I'm thankful to the organizers, and if you have any queries, I'm open, kindly ask. In the earlier session, it was wonderful feedbacks you are giving by raising queries and all. I'm thankful to you. That is a two-way learning. Likewise, if you have any query, you are open to ask.
I think, sir, they do not have any questions. So I would like to end this session here. I am extremely thankful to our resource person, Dr. Vishal Vyas, sir, who has taken a tough task to explain VAR, VCM, and causality to our participants. Sir has explained the concepts very elaborately so that it becomes easy for us to understand. The real life examples were taken by Sir has given a scope to our participants to think and apply the concepts accordingly. Thank you, sir, for your valuable time. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Rita madam,
Yes, sir.
actually I have downloaded the videos, but they are with .webex extension.
Yes, sir. For that, you have to open your WebEx. Same with our case also. We have to open the WebEx. Then from that particular site, you have to download the videos. You have
Okay,
to create your
then-
mail ID. You have to create your account in WebEx.
Okay, okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Because the extension is WebEx and we cannot change the extension to any other thing. For that particular purpose, you have to download the WebEx. Then you have to open your account over there and then you can download the files from there.
Okay,
First time
thank you.
for first video, you have to do that. From second onward, there is no issue.
Okay, thank you.
विशाल सर, थैंक यू सो मच. थैंक यू सो मच. फाइनली आपको देखा हमने. सर मैंने आपको एक मेल किया है, आप उसको चेक करके हमको भेज दीजिएगा.
Sir, you are on mute.
Sure, ma'am. I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So participant will start the next session at 3:50. It is about panel data analysis. So kindly join at 3:15 sharp. I have shared the databases for that particular session.